G'day, I'm Richard Thompson. I'm the 2017 Ultraman Australia Champion and current Ultraman World Record Holder. You're listening to the Physical Performance Podcast.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome back, or welcome to the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Revvies Energy Strips and Pogo Physio. I'm Brad Beer, physiotherapist by trade and training and founder of Pogo Physio. The aim of this show is to educate and inspire you towards the pursuit of your own physical best performance. We do this through interviews featuring some of the world's top physical performers and also some of the world's preeminent experts in their chosen fields. Each week, we'll aim to bring you the highs, the lows, and the learnings of the featured guests. And on this week's episode, I share with you a conversation that I recently had with featured performer Richard Thompson. Richard is a man, quite simply, of incredible endurance. Richard is the 2017 Australian Ultraman Champion and the current Ultraman World Record Holder. What's an Ultraman? Well, this is what an Ultraman comprises. It comprises an incredible 321.6 mile journey. That's 517.5 kilometers. It involves a 6.2 mile swim, that's 10 kilometers, 263 miles of cycling, 423 kilometers, and 52.4 miles or 84 kilometers of ultra marathoning. Absolutely incredible. And at the time of this episode release, Richard is just a matter of weeks away from the 2018 World Ultraman Championships to be held in Hawaii. So let's jump in and hear all about this incredible world of Ultraman racing with Richard Thompson of T0 Multisport. Richard Thompson, this is exciting. You are the Physical Performance Show's first Ultraman athlete, so welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad.
Let's start with something a bit fun. What's one thing that Richard Thompson's learning at the moment?
I think how to fit everything in. I thought I had that nailed, but we've just had our second child. He's only about 6 weeks old or 8 weeks old now. Fitting everything in to that schedule and trying to operate with as minimal number of hours of sleep in a day, but it's all pretty good.
Yeah, it's the challenge. So when you say fitting everything in, what does everything look like for Richard Thompson?
It's obviously a lot of it is training, a lot of it is work with the coaching business, and an important part is to support be there for the family. We've got a 4-year-old boy, and to be there for him, I don't want to be the dad that's never there. So, as well as everything, all the other things that everyone else has, and I'm certainly not alone in that regard. It's just a normal juggling act that a lot of athletes have. But it's the second child certainly has made things a little bit more hectic. Yeah, but in a good way.
In a good way. The tension of life, it never disappears. It just changes, doesn't it?
That's right.
Richard, let's talk firstly about the Ultraman concept, the Ultraman competition. It's something that obviously, in terms of visibility, hasn't got the same visibility as Ironman, which most people, even if they're outside of the world of endurance sport, have an appreciation for the Ironman triathlon. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into this world of Ultraman, which is such a big part of your life, what it is, how it originated, and where you fit into it, and then we'll go back and pick up your early days in sport.
Yeah, sure. So the Ultraman started in Hawaii about 35 years ago, and has been run there on the island every year by a couple, I think. Maybe it's been the last 20 years that they've sort of made it out as the World Championships over there. Now, across the world, there's maybe half a dozen different destinations that you can do an Ultraman race in the hope to get a Guernsey at the World Championships. So Australia's hosted one in Noosa for the past 4 years. It's not a professional sport like Ironman, which is probably half the reason why it doesn't have as great a attraction or popularity. But also, there's at any race there's only about 50 athletes that are allowed to compete. So, and that's through a number of reasons, logistics and the like. But it's a 3-day race, so stage race. The first day is a 10-kilometre swim, followed immediately by a 145-kilometre time trial. Day 2 is a 280-kilometre time trial. And then day 3 is the double marathon. So, the beauty, I think, of it all is it really requires you it's the fourth discipline of recovery. That is absolutely paramount. So in an Ironman, you can have two people that finish very similar and they'll be markedly different on the awards ceremony the next day. One might need a wheelchair to get up into the stage and the other might be able to run up. But for Ultraman, you need to be able to be really measured and control that recovery over those 3 days so that you can finish in the best possible way.
So it really does bring in, as you say, that fourth discipline, because you're backing up. It's a stage race of recovery, and we definitely want to pull that apart. But just in data-wise, what's the obviously that's the breakdown over days. What's the total breakdown when you look at the kilometres or miles for each discipline?
Yeah, so total is 10 kilometres of swimming, 420 kilometres of riding, and 84 kilometres of running over the 3 days. The other element, which is I guess different to Ironman, is every athlete has a huge team going into a race. That's certainly no different. But in an Ironman or in a one-day triathlon, your loved ones and your support team will bid you adieu at the start line and see you at the finish line, and it's all up to you to get to that finish line. They might be able to cheer you on the sidelines, I guess, but primarily it's up to you. But in Ultraman, you've got a crew, not too dissimilar to the likes of the Tour de France, where they will follow you in a support vehicle throughout the race, throughout the 3 days. You'll have a paddler in the water, and then they're in the car for those 3 days, and you're allowed a pacer on the run, for example. So the crew element is a huge part to success in the sport, and I think I was very fortunate to get some really good advice around that, and on debut be able to have that element, the crew element, really, really well, to the extent that people. It certainly doesn't feel like it's my own result, because it simply, without the crew there, you wouldn't be able to finish it full stop. So they were brilliant. So
there's that aspect. How did this even pop up on your radar? Maybe go back to a bit of a chronology here. I believe you took to your first triathlon in around 2000, 2001. When did the Ultraman pop up for you in that journey?
Yeah, so real simple. I started in late high school just to lose weight and get fit, and then I was a poor swimmer, so the longer the distance triathlon, the better it was, because the cycling was a lot longer than comparatively to the swim. I've been in the sport for near on sort of 18 years, and I had a couple of years where I didn't do it, and I thought early 30s I wanted to do a race that I wanted to know how fast or how well I could race as an early 30-year-old. Had some success, in my 20s, raced Hawaii as an age grouper and did well there. And I just, after some time off, I sort of thought, I wonder how well I could go, and put together a 2-year plan or 2.5-year plan to go back to Hawaii as an age grouper and do well. I qualified and raced, and it didn't pan out. I didn't have a race that I was really satisfied with. So due to a few external circumstances, my wife doing ultra running, and she was doing a big race late last year, the only way that I could use that fitness from 2016 Hawaii was to find a race in the first half of 2017. I didn't really feel like doing an Ironman for the sake of doing an Ironman, and Ultraman in Australia was just down the road from me, as I live on the Sunshine Coast, and it was perfect timing, and I just had to work out how the hell I was going to swim 10 kilometres because the rest was fine. The rest was manageable because I'd done a couple of 100K trail runs, and cycling certainly I'd say is my strength, but the swim 10 kilometres, that was just a big hurdle to get over initially.
So obviously the obvious question is, how did you get over that hurdle of swimming 10Ks? Mind you, it was in the beautiful shores of Noosa. Yeah, you couldn't pick a better place to swim. I grant that, but I think, and looking back, Brad, it's funny how those elements of unknown, or I guess the biggest hurdles, is the greatest success of the whole story. Like, I thought, in looking back, the training in my swimming was by far something that I will always look back, with great fondness. And I was able just to train. It just didn't bother me. I was able to get into that mindset where I could get to the pool and see an 8 or 9 or 10 kilometre pool set and just have no problem with it, and get into the zone of knuckling down on what I needed to do. And it was almost meditative. I was almost able to jump in. It felt like about 15 minutes later I'd be pulling myself out. It was actually 2 to 2.5 hours, and just loved it. So it's it was that swimming. And I remember, I think often athletes, when they go to races or they're in taper and they're so concerned about performance or what's going to happen, they forget to take stock as to how fit they actually are. And I remember looking at the time, thinking I'm never really going to be this fit in the water ever again. But I certainly appreciated, it's a lot of work in the swimming training, that is for sure. But it was worthwhile. It paid off, and it paid off with the Ultraman Australia title in 2017, and then obviously also the current Ultraman World Record Holder, which is a mighty achievement. What's the world record stand at, Richard? It's 21 hours, 21 minutes and 14 seconds. Wow. So it was. That certainly wasn't. I guess we knew what the time was to get the record, but we knew that also it needed 3 perfect days last year. It needed some great weather conditions, and a lot of things going our way. And we're super fortunate that it came down obviously to day 3, and we needed to run a 7:20 double marathon to get it. And that wasn't necessarily a given the state of I had a pretty tough, or I guess a knee injury going into that race. So doing that double marathon in that time wasn't guaranteed, but certainly it was a pretty special 3 days. And to run that double marathon sub 7:20, what pace does that work out to be per kilometre, or probably easier than per mile? But what was the pace? So we did it in just over 7 hours. So that's 2 3:30 marathons. So that works out to be about 5 minutes per kilometre, which I think, given I had done no running in the last, or very little running in the last 6 weeks of that preparation, because I had a really fairly significant ITB syndrome going into my knee, and my knee was quite sore. So did a lot of pool running. Would have benefited from the treadmill that you have in your centre there, Brad. The Ultra G. That's it. As I said, we didn't really know. The first marathon we went through okay, and the start of the second marathon got pretty. There's a few questions being raised in terms of whether or not it could happen, because the pain was quite significant. But we problem solved, and that, as I said, that's the benefit of the crew. The crew's there to think, have a clear mind when maybe you don't as an athlete. And Richard, now looking ahead, you've got the Ultraman Australia title coming up again in November 2018, and so obviously looking to defend your title. And the World Championships, Richard, coming up in November in 2018, correct? Yeah, so the World Championships in November in Hawaii. The thought about that was, I guess, that going back to Ultraman Australia, as I said, I wanted to have a performance that I was really happy with in terms of what that reflected in my own ability, and I genuinely think that
those 3 days did. The only caveat to that was my knee injury in the running. It certainly wasn't the best run that I'm capable of. It was the best run I was capable of on the day because of my knee, but if I was uninjured and had a great preparation with running, I wonder, the jury in my mind is still out as how fast I can run a double marathon. So the thought was, and also I think having a world record is great, and that's no doubt will get beaten. I think I'm an age grouper, so you just need a professional to turn up and they'll absolutely rewrite that number. But I'd like to be able to go on to Hawaii where the history is, the 35-year history, and race on the same sort of course that everyone else has raced on to compare myself there.
And is that course anyway resemblant to the World Ironman Championship course?
Yeah, so it starts in Kailua Bay, in the same place that the Ironman starts, and swims down the island towards the Sheraton, if anyone's aware of that. Basically, the bottom end of Alihi Drive for the 10 kilometres. Now, and then you ride to the top of the town called Volcano. Given that there's quite a lot of volcano activity at the moment with the lava, the day 2 bike course is going to be changed. Unfortunately, I've been told. We haven't been told as to how how the 280 kilometres on day 2 will look, but I presume it'll come back up, towards where everyone rides on the Ironman course, and then the run starts at Harvey, which is the U-turn, which is the turnaround point for the Ironman. So we start there for the run and run all the way back to Kona.
Wow. And Richard, you mentioned you're an age group athlete, but you're a very impressive one. I mean, you won the age group Ironman World Championship title. What year was that?
That was 10 years ago, 2008. As a 23-year-old. So incredibly fortunate again to have a day where I think everything went to plan and everything. I think things went wrong that day certainly, but to be able to. Yeah, looking back now and seeing that what a lot of people, in the coaching side of things, seeing what everyone wants to do, and sometimes it's just not happening, or otherwise, certainly my experience in 2016 as an athlete, it just doesn't always happen the way you want to. I'm certainly very very happy or very privileged to know that was very fortunate rather to know that I was able to do that 10 years ago for sure.
In growing up, what did that look like for you, Richard? You must have been a pretty athletic lad growing up. What were you into? Could you have ever imagined this would be part of your adult life?
No, not at all. I think I know, you've had a lot of amazing guests on your program who have had a wonderful, growing up wonderfully aerobic, adolescent times, and that certainly wasn't me. I was the goalkeeper and the wicketkeeper because it involved the least amount of running. So, I had a mountain bike, like a mountain bike, and did a bit of riding around the suburbs, but nothing of note. And I certainly didn't swim, as my swimming, the amount of work that's required to get my swim down is reminds me. But I don't think, and I guess that really shapes the way that I coach, or the way that I feel about athletic performance, especially in this endurance field, an ultra endurance field. That the body's an amazing thing, and it can evolve, and you can teach it ways to become better, and through consistency and through a lot of hard work and determination. I genuinely, if I can achieve what I've been able to achieve just on an age group level, then anyone can do anything they want. Like they can, I genuinely believe that. And if you want to qualify for Hawaii and you're way off the mark, then that's still possible. It doesn't mean you can't do it. And I think there's a fair amount of idolization, or people think that these top end athletes, certainly the age groupers, are freaks or gifted or otherwise. But it's certainly not. I don't think it's about a predisposition to being athletic or otherwise. I think a lot comes down to, sure, sometimes that helps, but if you've got the determination and the time and the consistency, then it'll come into play for sure.
So if you had to break down, Richard, the percentage of performance that was hard work and grunt versus pure talent as a percentage? It's a broad question, I appreciate. What would you break it down as, obviously with your own performances and your work with, your squad T0 multisport? What's the breakdown in your mind?
I think it's 80-90% determination, consistency and determination. That really is the key. You hear too many stories about people who, do very well who don't have that athletic background. And I think the mindset is key to be able to tap into that, understanding that, if it's your goal and you want to achieve it, then it's just a matter of time. Time just has to catch up. You don't need to, it's not a matter of if you want to achieve that, it's just a matter of when that'll happen. So
mindset, Richard's a huge component of obviously what you do and also what you observe with your athletes and others in the field. It does speak volumes to the importance of just showing up. Absolutely. And I think you sort of forget, when I was sort of 18 and starting in the sport, I knew Ironman, but I absolutely didn't think that I would be doing one, let alone doing 15 of them, let alone doing them well. But you sort of have to go about your business or your training or your self-improving just as a constant in your life. And if it's an endurance sport that you're focusing on and you're improving, then I think a lot of people, potentially try to go for the silver bullet approach, or if this doesn't work, if I haven't achieved this, put a time limit on it. I think that's a really dangerous thing. If you say, if I haven't achieved this within X amount of time, then I've either failed or it's game over, and I've been guilty of that as well. But I think if you want something strong enough, or you believe, you just have to turn up, be consistent day in, day out. And I don't think the sport has enough skill requirement to put anyone out. I think obviously swimming is probably the most skillful part of the whole thing, but you've seen the likes of, like your previous guest, Lionel Sanders, who couldn't swim and has been able to, as an adult, hone that skill. And I think for a lot of age groupers who want to achieve in the sport, or whatever that means for them, but I think you don't necessarily need a huge skill base, to improve your swimming to an extent that will, that will limit your ability to achieve in the sport. So at the end of the day, I think it's aerobic learning, and your body needs just to improve and needs time to do that. And if you're patient enough and you're consistent enough, then that's the way that I see it and that's been shaped from my experience coming from someone who did nothing as a kid or as an adolescent. It was 5 years, took 5 consistent years of training to turn up in Hawaii and win that as an age grouper. It didn't happen. I know there was a lot of last place. I think my first triathlon, I was last in the boys and the girls. Wow.
As an under 20-year-old.
You're listening to Richard Thompson, World Ultraman Record Holder, as he gets set for the World Ultraman Championships, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his sporting career to date. Support for today's show comes from Revvies Energy Strips, a faster, safe, and convenient caffeine strip that dissolves on the tongue, delivering a quick boost for runners that is easy on the stomach as well. Certified by Informed Sport and used by athletes such as previous Physical Performance Show guests Eloise Wellings, Jessica Trengove, Charlotte Purdue, and Dane Bird-Smith. If you'd like to trial Revvies for yourself, then Revvies are offering listeners of the Physical Performance Show a starter pack for just $10 and free shipping. Head over to www.revviesenergy.com, that is REVVIESENERGY, revviesenergy.com, and type in the promo code POGO, that's capital POGO, at the checkout. Only available until November 30th, 2018. So that's a generous offer brought to you by today's show sponsor, Revvies Energy Strips. Jump over and do check out this great product. Certainly has helped the former Physical Performance Show guests, as was mentioned. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to complete their rehabilitation, get back to their physical best, and cross their physio finish line. We do this through traditional pay-as-you-go session-to-session appointments, but also some fantastic and unique models of care, all designed to help you save money and recover faster. These include our industry-first, award-winning 2, 6 and 12-week fixed-fee, unlimited access finish line programs, and our very popular monthly wellness booster packs, including remedial massage therapy, hands-on physiotherapy, active rehabilitation, including clinical Pilates, and use of state-of-the-art equipment such as the Ultra-G anti-gravity treadmill, all from a low $195 per month health fund rebatable. To find out more about Pogo Physio services, jump over to pogophysio.com.au and schedule in your 1 hour initial appointment. For now, let's jump back with Richard Thompson, World Ultraman Record Holder, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his sporting and coaching career at T0 Multisport to date. Richard, in terms of your typical training week leading into an Ultraman World Championships in November, what would a typical training week look like in terms of hours, volume, recovery strategies, etc.?
Yeah, I think maybe my scenario is a little bit different to most in terms of as an age grouper, but I think on average it's probably about 25 hours of training a week. I'd like, even though I'm struggling at the moment to get there, I'd like to be in the pool 3 times a week, with one of those sessions being quite long. Riding takes, I think, a lot of the time, so you're probably doing between 12 and sort of 16 hours of riding. And then, you're trying to fit in maybe anywhere between, depending on what block you're in, between 60 and 100, kilometres of running. And that's just trying to get through that volume. That obviously ebbs and flows throughout the next. That will ebb and flow over the next 5 to 6 months. But yeah, and then in terms of recovery, that's obviously key. That's where I think the biggest gain. Obviously, the gains occur, but that's where a lot of age groupers sort of don't really appreciate or sometimes forget. And things like, getting yourself into some Normatec boots each night after a hard day, or getting a masseuse every week, or massage every week rather, to eating really, really good foods and hydrating. And yeah, there's a lot of things you can do on a daily basis in recovery, because I think anyone can turn up and do it. If you've got the endurance background, anyone can turn up and do a 5, 6 hour, 7 hour ride. But if you can it's the people that do very well who can wake up the next morning and not feel the effects of that and keep going on day in, day out, for sure.
And any, in terms of keeping yourself injury free, Richard, any strength training, any sort of home exercise stuff you do? Anything you would add to an Ultraman preparation on that front?
Yeah, 100%. So I neglected, when I got injured last year, I neglected these things, and these things I'm going to be certainly putting into these last 5 months of prep. But reformer Pilates, I think, is a critical step to the overall picture, as well as sort of plyometric work, so single leg work at home with your fit ball, and obviously core becomes a huge component when your muscles break down as they do over 3 days, and you're trying to resurrect them for day 3 on a double marathon. If you can control your core and control your hips, then the form should stay with you for as long as possible.
Richard, you would be asked this regularly, but it's the obvious question: why? What's the attraction with pushing yourself for the 21 hours, 21 minutes? And I'm not sure why you didn't slow down for 7 seconds and make it 21, 21, 21. But what's the attraction? What drives Richard Thompson?
I think for me, for last year, it was, we had done a 2.5 year plan to go back to Hawaii, and my intention was to win it again as an age grouper. Primarily was to have a day that I was truly, proud of for myself, and hopefully that would allow me to win. And if it didn't, that would be fine. But I wanted to cross the finish line knowing that was a day that I did everything possible, and I couldn't do anything different. And when that didn't happen, despite the opportunity for it to allow it to happen, I think it grated my teeth a lot, and I sort of reflected and thought, geez, my family has sacrificed, 2 years for me to get back to this shape, and I wanted one more. I wanted another go using that fitness to show to myself that I've actually, what I'm capable of as a 30-year-old athlete, and certainly to justify the sacrifice that the family's made. So that certainly drove me for last year. This year's a little bit different. This year's to think, right, I want to be very good, keep my run form and not be injured, and to see, to try to emulate that in much more difficult scenario, a much more difficult location.
It's going to be exciting as the journey goes forwards to World Championships. That's for sure. Let's do a performance round, Richard. So you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sounds good.
Training session Richard Thompson most dislikes?
I think broadly anything that requires me to start training after about 8 p.m. If I'm training after dinner, that's a really difficult thing for me to do. But I think specifically, a heavy speed set for running is probably my least favourite. Anything on the track, 400s, 800s, milers, that at sort of at very high intensity, that's certainly not my jam. But I'll do it, but I'll grip my teeth. I'll grip my teeth while doing it.
Training session most loved?
As I said, I think when I'm in that zone, a swim set between 7 and 10 kilometres. For some reason, I think for some reason that not having, it's just hypnotic. Not having a phone, not having data, not having a computer on you, and you're going off doing 2400s or something like that, and you just all you can feel is the feeling of the water on your arm, or you're controlling your breathing, or things little things to think about. But by and large, that's probably the best feeling I've had in a long time in training. You
described it so well, you're almost enticing me to want to go to a set of 2400s now. Favorite pre-race meal?
Favorite pre-race meal? I'm a vegetarian, have been for about 8 years, so I think it would just be a pasta dish and some good mushrooms and spinach and maybe a bit of pesto in there, but that's usually what the doctor orders the night before. Bedtime, morning time, I mean, it's a new season of life with the new bub in the household, so probably difficult to answer at the moment. Yeah, ordinarily I'd like to get, between 5 and 6 hours a night. When I'm training hard, I'd probably err on 6, but, between 9 to 10 o'clock, I'd be trying to get to sleep normally and getting up at about 4. And that I'd be getting up, I think your body getting used to a sleep cycle is key. So I'd be getting up at 4, regardless of what I have on in the morning. If I don't have anything, I'll still be getting up and doing something. Yeah, that rhythm. Who's the athlete you most admire, Richard, and why? Look, it's pretty cliche, but I'm going to say Roger Federer. I think he's been able to, through a lot of hard work, firstly make the ranks, secondly be able to stay there, stay in top form for so long, and he's got some wonderful people around him, and he's been able to, on a business level, do very, very well, and he's just professional in every aspect of his life. So I'd say Roger. Toughest competitor you've ever come up against? Who's that, Richard? Oh, now you're going. This is one for the one. I actually didn't think you'd ask this question, but back in 2000, my first Ironman was in Port Macquarie in 2006, and there's a guy down in Port Macquarie called Tim Prowse. He was in my age group. He broke 9 hours when on that course. Not breaking 9 hours certainly didn't happen, and he did that. He got top 10 overall, turned professional, and then he had a very small stint as a professional. I think he retired because of a back injury, but he was a brilliant athlete. I think probably one of the best I've ever seen as a very young 20-year-old. Came out of that Port Macquarie stable with the likes of Burkle, etc. But yeah, Tim Prowse, he was unbeatable. Is there a mantra when you're out there for 21 hours, 21 minutes, 14 seconds that is going through your head? Any regular self-talk? There is a lot of self-talk, obviously, but also there needs to be a lot of quiet. I think it's too long a time to try to rev yourself up and keep repeating the same mantra. But I think when it becomes difficult, it's just about trusting yourself and reminding yourself that you are strong and you're able to get it done regardless of how you're feeling.
I know you've given some insights into recovery, but your best recovery tip?
Look, sleep is a good one. I'm failing in that regard at the moment, but that's fine. But sleep's a really good one. I do think eating as much whole food as possible, getting rid of the the additives and the artificials and things like that. Lean meats and really a really clean diet will pay dividends, I think, the next day and the next day.
I was shocked, Richard. Side note, I heard Dr. Peter Bruckner speaking recently at a symposium in Melbourne, and he said vegetable oils are actually cleaning chemicals. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's their origins. What's one word how would you describe being in the zone, Richard?
I would describe it as meditative, whereby it doesn't happen too often as everyone sort of suggests, but for me the last time that happened was swimming training, and a lot of that race as well last year, but where it's almost in a dreamlike state where you know you're doing it but you're not really present. Your mind is nowhere. It's sort of it's an incredible feeling, and a lot of the times, I'd be getting into that pool and know that it will happen. And when it is happening, I was able to almost pull myself out of, be able to see that it's happening and stay in the moment. Yeah, it's being in the zone is something that I think every athlete is, really, really likes to do. Yeah, looking forward to trying to get into there a lot more in the next 5 months.
One word to describe your racing style?
Measured. I'd say measured.
And what's the hardest session you've ever done?
The hardest session, I think, was the longest ride we did last year, and that was that was only 250 kilometres, but because of the terrain that we took, it took near on 8 and a bit hours, and I was, I haven't felt that tired off a bike in a long time, and certainly didn't feel anywhere near as tired after day 2 of that race, which I guess is the point in training. But I'd say, yeah, a ride where your odometer is saying 250 plus is a very tough day.
If you missed last week's episode of the Physica Performance Show featuring dual Australian Olympic swimmer and 400-metre freestyle Commonwealth Games champion David McKeon, then here's a little snippet of what you missed.
My greatest achievement, I'll probably have to say making 2 Olympic Games. It's very hard to make 1. To make 2 is pretty special. And then I guess that second Olympic Games, being on the team with both Emma and Dad on the same Olympic Games for the same sport, is something very much that I'll remember for the rest of my life. That would have to be a highlight.
To tune into the full episode of the Physica Performance Show featuring David McKeon, jump back and download the episode, and while there, take a moment to peruse the archives of the Physica Performance Show, featuring Physica performers, expert editions, interest editions, and the Coach's Corner editions. For now, let's jump back with Richard Thompson sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings from his triathlon and Ultraman career to date. Richard, in your role now with T0 Coaching, which I believe you launched in 2010, if you could boil all the learnings from your own athletic journey to date, Ultraman World Record Holder, Ultraman Australia Champion, your success through your Ironman triathlon days, you won a world title there, Hell of the West title, you've got a very rich athletic heritage since you've been at triathlon, combined with your coaching knowledge, which is coming up to a decade's worth, what would you boil down? It's a tricky question, but what would be the one bit of advice you'd give to listeners on how they can perform at their physical best?
I think, and I touched on it earlier, I think being patient and being primarily focused on consistency. If you do that, then I think anyone's ability will continue to increase or continually to improve. When you're on the start line, you can't improve your ability on the day. You've only got 100% of your ability on that day, you've got no more time to be fitter, for example, then it's up to you on the race day to get the most out of yourself. Now, that's a really important trait to train and to improve. So, people cross the finish line and go, you know whether or not you've done your absolute best or you've given everything you've got. And you got to keep refining that trait or that skill, I guess, is of getting everything out of yourself on the day. As long as you are patient and as long as you're with your goals, that is, and as long as you are consistent with your work ethic, then you'll achieve those goals. I think the biggest thing as well is to appreciate that you need to find solace. You need to find your goal almost has to be in the journey or in the grind rather than the destination. So you need to be able to really enjoy what it takes, for example, to qualify for Hawaii, that grind and that process, rather than the success that comes or the feeling that comes from qualifying. If you can do that, then I think the journey to get there becomes a lot shorter.
And as a coach of so many athletes now, what for the person that's listening in that's contemplating, taking to a start line of an event or considering joining a squad or even starting some training, that they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and intimidated, maybe even insecure around apparently all these people that have it together, what would be a bit of advice you'd give to that listener just to help them take the next practical step?
I think that you need to ignore everyone else. Everyone else has done that before, and I think if you focus on your own square meter at all times, just go about your own business. Don't worry about what other people look like or how they come across. And you just focus on your own self and getting through it the best you can, and keep improving. And I think that's I think a lot of people. Yeah, I think that's the best advice I could give you.
Your own square metre, I like that. Richard, personality question behind the guest. If you could have dinner with 3 people, you've heard it before, living or past, who's at your dinner table and why? Leaving aside the obvious, your loved ones.
Oh, well, I had Lisa as a guest, but Coach John Wooden, who's deceased but was arguably the greatest coach of all sport or of any sport. I would put Roger Federer there, because I'd like to chew his ear off. And the third one, as I said, I had Lisa on my list, but look, we'll go with Ricky Gervais just to get some light humour in there, I think.
Interesting table. And finally, Richard, every guest of the Physical Performance Show issues listeners with a challenge. So what's Richard Thompson, Ultraman World Record Holder's physical challenge of the week going to be to listeners?
Okay, so I think and I've seen this on the TV a couple of weeks ago, and I've done a little bit of research on it previously as well. But it's more to do with your mental ability to endure, and a really, really small experiment, I guess. You set yourself up in front of a mirror, and you hold a 2 to 3 kilo weight on each arm. So it could be a water bottle or heavy water bottle or a jug of milk or something. And you keep your arms out straight, so you've sort of created a T sort of thing, and you get someone, or you can start the clock or get someone to help you, and you have to keep your arms as straight as possible without your elbow or your shoulder dropping. And, you have to go as long as you can go, and then you press the stop on the clock once you've failed to keeping your arms out straight. Now, you will think that your your arms will be shaking and the like, but you'll think your muscles will have given in, but it's in fact your mind has given in, because your mind has tried to protect its own body by saying, all right, enough's enough, we've got to drop these weights.
Powerful, eh?
Yeah, and so if you can, and then you need to work on, I think, now you've got that time in that first base round, work different stimulus that works for you as an individual to get greater time. So it might be looking at the clock again, knowing what you've done in the past. It might be having somebody there watching you and erring you on. It might be, you might start thinking about what you've, in the sport, what you've sacrificed or who you're doing it for. And you just work out ways to help support your body and your mind to hold those weights up for longer at a time. And the closer you get to getting your muscles giving in first, the better your mental aptitude is come race day, I think.
It's certainly, along the lines of the works of Matt Fitzgerald, isn't it? Mastering the mind over muscle, trying to get that perception of effort level raised so you can get more out of it, reduced, so you can get more out of your true physical potential without your mind short-circuiting it. So, Richard, this has been a whole lot of fun. Thank you for being the first Ultraman guest and for enlightening us to a little bit of the world of Ultraman and what it entails, and looking ahead to the World Championships. All the very best. Where can listeners follow more and find out more about your journey and even the T0 Multisport coaching services?
Yeah, so T0multisport.com is the coaching hub. On Facebook and Instagram at T0, hashtag at T0 Multisport. And for me, I'm on Instagram at rich.t0, and that's where I'll likely be putting most of the journey between now and November up. But yeah, it's going to be an enjoyable 4 months or 5 months of sacrifice, but it'll be good to do.
Well, all the very best, and go and fly the Australian flag high. So we wish you all the best.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks so much for having me.
So there you have it. Another episode of the Physica Performance Show, and I hope you enjoyed today's insight into the world of Ultraman racing. What another level of endurance. If you did enjoy today's episode, then please let myself know at Brad_Beer on Twitter and Instagram, and also today's featured guest, Richard Thompson, whom you'll find over on Instagram at rich.t0. Now that's 0, Z-E-R-O. So please let Rich know what it was that you enjoyed, and do consider sharing this with someone in your world who you know may enjoy it. A big thanks for rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the show. All of those things help the Physica Performance Show gain more traction and make it into the earbuds of people who, just like you, are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. It's been a real thrill to see the Physica Performance Show sitting in the top 20 often, and sometimes top 10 of the iTunes fitness and health charts. So massive, massive thank you for your support with those 3 very practical ways of helping the show to grow: ratings, reviews, and subscribing. A big thanks this week to listener of the show, Smiles73. Smiles commented, "Great listening," and rated the show 5 stars over on iTunes, commenting, "I enjoy listening to the Physica Performance Show as Brad relates to various athletes about their dreams, struggles, and successes. Well done." Smiles, thanks for taking the time to leave that review. And as a little way of saying thanks, be sure to drop me an email or find me on social. My email address, b.beer@pogophysio.com.au, and we'll get in the post to you a signed copy of my running bestseller, You Can Run Pain Free, which is now in its 2nd revised and expanded edition. So Smiles, keep an eye out for that one coming to you. A big thanks to the 3 very good folk who make the Physica Performance Show possible each and every week. That is Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Olding on all things graphic design. Of course, another huge thanks to today's show sponsor, Revvies Energy Strips. Be sure to jump over and take up the offer of the starter pack over at revviesenergy.com, and also give them a follow over on Instagram at Revvies Energy, REVVIES Energy. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physica Performance Show, we keep the Physica Performer theme going, and I bring you a very fun and insightful conversation that I recently had with 2004 Olympic cycling road race champion Sarah Carrigan, OAM medal recipient. It's an absolute bumper conversation. You're not going to want to miss it. So until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physica Performance Show.